We have seen the first Madonna, Savitri meets while she is entering into the domain of her soul. She is the Madonna of suffering. She is the Madonna of grief divine. She is the Madonna of divine pity. Karunamayi Mata, who has taken the burden of this creation upon herself. She bears the grief, the pang, the suffering, the anguish, everything of this creation, of this mortal creature. And it is because she is there that man can to some extent bear the agony of life present in this world here. Savitri tells her that she is this Madonna of suffering, of grief divine, is a part of her own soul. And in other words, it is Savitri who is herself actually bearing the cosmic grief in her soul, the grief of this creation, of this mortal world. And it is because of that that we get solace, we get comfort, we have hope of achieving something in this creation. Otherwise, we would have been simply got crushed by the assaults of the troubles, the grief, the tortures of this world. Even while Savitri is assuring her that one day she will come back and give her the divine strength to bear this world, and she assures her that one day there shall be peace and joy forevermore. At the moment there is no peace in this world, there is no joy in this world, but she will come back and bring from the divine source joy divine and peace divine. First peace and then joy. Only when that is established, then can the higher powers of Savitri's soul emerge and do their work. The second power Savitri is meeting is the power of strength and might and wisdom and love, and she is going to narrate to her her story, the part she is playing here in this world here. So Savitri is moving further on her inward journey, and she sees that there is someone sitting there on a huge, massive rock. On past she, we are on section 122, Book of Yoga, the finding of the soul, the triple soul forces, Canto 4, section 122. On past she, in her spirit's upward route, from the first Madonna whom she is meeting, she is now going to meet other one, upward route. An ardent grandeur climbed with ferns and rocks and an ardent grandeur climbed with ferns and rocks. A quiet wind flattered the heart of warmth. A fine perfume breathed from slender trees. So this is a very delicate image, very sweet, very lovable, very charming. An ardent grandeur climbed with ferns and rocks. A quiet wind flattered the heart of warmth. The poetry is very lyrical. Flattered the heart of warmth. A finer perfume, delicate, sweet, very light, from slender trees is there around, and all grew beautiful. All beautiful grew, subtle and high and strange. Subtle and high and strange. Here on a boulder, carved like a huge throne, a woman sat in gold and purple sheen, armed with the trident and the thunderbolt, her feet upon a couchant lion's back. So she is sitting here on a huge boulder. Her image is there in the Rocky Mountain there, and she looks impressive, majestic, full of beauty and grandeur and power and strength. A woman sat in gold and purple sheen. Gold and purple, these are the signs of majesty, of royalty, and she is there, sitting there in her royal posture, armed with a trident and a thunderbolt. She is there with the weapons, trident and thunderbolt, Trishul and Vajra. These are the weapons she is carrying, not only to defend herself against the hostile forces, the anti-divine forces, but also to attack them. She is a warrior goddess, and she is there ready to fight any opposition that might spring up from anywhere. And with a trident and a thunderbolt, Trishul and Vajra, her feet upon a couchant lion's back. The lion is sitting at her feet, and her feet are actually resting on his back there. A formidable smile curved round her lips. She is there. There is a very gentle but very powerful smile on her lips. One can feel the presence. That is the image of Durga when she is riding the lion. You see on her lips a very gentle smile. But here it is a formidable smile. See? Formidable smile curved round her lips. Heaven fire laughed in the corners of her eyes. She is looking at the entire scene, at the entire cosmic dimension, against everything, with the fire coming out from her eyes. Heaven fire, Divya Agni, it is that which is shining out from her eyes. Divya Agni, heaven fire, laughed in the corners of her eyes. Her body, a mass of courage and heavenly strength. She is dauntless, she is fearless, she will not be afraid of any enemy, howsoever strong he may be. Full of courage, she is sitting there. Her body, a mass of courage and heavenly strength. That is what she is carrying in her body, heavenly strength. She menaced the triumph of the nether gods, the gods of the lower world. the Daityas or the Patala, these powers, she will destroy them completely. She menaced the triumph. So if they are winning here a victory in life here, it is she who will take away that victory from their hands, snatch away that victory from them. She menaced the triumph of the nether gods. A halo of lightnings flamed around her head. So what is there around her head, behind her head? Lightning, shining, lustrous, piercing. A halo of lightning flamed around her head. A sovereignty, a great cestus zoned her robe. Aishwarya, sovereignty, kingliness, that is what she is there. Sovereignty. And it is a sovereignty which she is wearing around her waist like a belt. That is what Durga is depicted. She will be wearing a belt, a golden shining belt around her waist, you see. And sovereignty, a great cestus zoned her robe, and majesty and victory sat with her. She is sitting on that stone there. On one side is majesty, on the other side is victory. Vaibhava, majesty, she is there with him. Vijaya, Yasha, he is there with her. Vaibhava, he is there with her. So on one side is majesty, on the other side is victory, conquest, Yasha. They are there sitting by her side. And majesty and victory sat with her, guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield against the flat equality or death, and the all-leveling insurgent night, the hierarchy of the ordered powers. She is sitting there. By her side are majesty and victory, and they are guarding what? The hierarchy of these cosmic worlds, the ascending levels of this world, guarding the wide cosmic battlefield. Here is the battlefield. Here is the Kurukshetra. Here is taking the constant war between Devas and Daityas, between the divine forces, the forces of light, and the forces of darkness, the forces of night. The constant battlefield is there here in this creation. And she is there sitting with victory and majesty on her side, guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield against the flat equality of death. Death doesn't care who will die. Everybody is equal in the eyes of death. Whether he is a king, whether he is a beggar, whether he is an animal, whether he is any living creature, death doesn't care about that thing. Everybody is equal to him. Death is called the leveler. He levels everybody. You may be a very rich man in life. You may be a very poor person in life. You may be a very wise man, philosopher, scientist. Death doesn't care. Everybody is equal, and they are flattened by him. Guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield against the flat equality of death and the all-willing insurgent night, night which rises with revolt against the powers of day. Against that she is guarding the powers of the hierarchy of the ordered worlds. The ascending steps which are there, it is she who is guarding these powers, and it is because of her that these powers can work here. In spite of death, in spite of hostile forces, they are able to work here. And sovereignty, a great sister, zoned her room, and majesty and victory sat with her, guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield Again the flat equality of death and the all-living insurgent night, the hierarchy of the ordered powers, one above the other, the powers are rising in their greatness, in their functions, in their duties, in their operations. There are powers above powers, and she is the one who is guarding all those powers. Now here we have got a line, guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield. Now here we have battlefield, Kurukshetra, Yuddha Bhumi, that is the battlefield. Battlefield is hyphenated, battle-field. This is the only occurrence in Savitri, or battlefield with hyphen. There are two more occurrences of this word battlefield, but they are without hyphen. In this particular case, we see that there is a hyphen here. Now, technically, from the point of view of English, battlefield is a single word. It is not battle-field. It is a single word. Battlefield, Kurukshetra. We don't say Kurukshetra like that. Ranabhumi is a single word. It's not Ranabhumi. Ranabhumi is a single word like that. Same way here, battlefield. But the hyphenation is serving a very distinct purpose from the point of view of poetry. That is very important. And that is what you have in Savitri. The alertness to the poetic rhythm and movement is what gives value to each and everything which is present in Savitri. Why hyphen? Why not hyphen? All these things are important in a certain point. The line is guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield. Guarding, that is long short, trochee. Guarding in the Pyrrhic, short. Wide cosmic, again long, spondy. Battle, cosmic battle, I am. Field, I am. So you have here basically trochee, Pyrrhic, spondy, I am. That's the rhythm of the line. And if you remove that hyphen, it will become battlefield. See, the accent which is necessary on field, that goes away, and then the rhythm is spoiled. Battlefield. You see, the power goes away straight away. But with hyphen, you are giving a definite accent on field, and the rhythm changes because of that. Let's read again. Guarding in the wide cosmic battlefield. That is how the rhythm goes here, see, because of the hyphen there. See. So the poet is very particular also about the technical aspect of it, about the rhythmical movement of each and every line, and therefore each and every comma, punctuation, hyphenation, or whatever you call it, is important in Savitri. Against the flat equality of them and the all-living insurgent night, the hierarchy of the ordered powers, the high chainless values, the peaked eminences. She is guarding the values of existence, high, noble, lofty. These are the values, precious things of life, of existence. She is guarding them, you see. High, chainless values, the peaked eminences, the greatnesses, the qualities which are important, the superlatives which are necessary for existence. It is she who is guarding all the while. The hierarchy of the ordered powers, the high chainless values, the peaked eminences, the privileged aristocracy of truth. Truth has its own Aishwarya, wideness, majesty, and it is she who is guarding the majesty of truth here in spite of darkness, in spite of opposition, in spite of ugliness. It is she who is guarding the values of truth here. The privileged aristocracy of truth, and in the governing ideals of sun, the ideal sun which is shining here, which is governing. It is the idea which is governing this creation. It is she who is guarding the sun. And in the governing ideals, the sun, the triumvirate of wisdom, love, and bliss, and the soul autocracy or the absolute light. So truth, then ideals, sun's values, then wisdom, love, and bliss, and the autocracy or the absolute light in this creation. It is these she is guarding against all the hostile attacks. So hers is a warrior spirit to fight against all which will attack these values here in existence. The high changeless values, the peaked eminences, the privileged aristocracy of truth, widest abundance, plenitude, generosity, that is the quality of aristocracy, nobility of truth. These are the things which is guarding here. And in the governing ideal sun, under the ideal sun, what is she is governing? The triumvirate of wisdom, love, and bliss. The three forces, three powers, three great agents which are governing here. It is them she is guarding. Who are these? Wisdom, love, and bliss. Vijnana, prema, ananda. These are the qualities which are present here. And it is this triumvirate which she is supporting and protecting in this creation. Vijnana, ananda, prema, because they are otherwise susceptible to attacks by the hostile forces in this creation. She is standing there, and because of her, these are safe here, you see. And the soul autocracy of the absolute light, autocracy, single master, full authority in this creation. Of whose? Of light, Prakasha. It is the autocracy of Prakasha, of light, which is guarding here. So basically, we have got here a kind of a description of political order, triumvirate, autocracy. Then earlier we had aristocracy. These are the high noble powers, Nawab, aristocrat. These are the qualities which one cherishes to have here. Triumvirate, that is the famous phrase of the ancient Roman times. And the first triumvirate was Julius Caesar. Who are these first? Let us see. Let me check again. Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Marcus Decipius. This was the first triumvirate. After Julius Caesar murder, the second triumvirate which came into existence was Octavius, that is Augustus Caesar, Mark Antony, and Lepidus. These are the three powers which are governing simultaneously the Roman kingdom at the time, Roman Empire. Now here we have got the triumvirate of wisdom, love, and bliss. It is their aristocracy, their power, their authority which is governing this creation. And to guard them, we have got legions, we have got powers. But here we have got this Madonna herself, this great majestic lady, woman. It is she with a lion at her feet, with a trishul in her hand, Vajra in her hand, sitting there, see. Trident and thunderbolt. It is she is carrying on with her. and the governing ideal sun, the triumvirate of wisdom, love, and bliss, and the soul autocracy of the absolute light. Light that cannot be challenged, Prakasha. It is she who is guarding all those things here. August, on her seat in the inner world of mind. Where is she sitting? In the inner world of mind. She has not yet entered, Savitri has not yet entered into her soul. She has gone level below level. She is now in the inner world of mind, and it is there she is meeting this woman. August on her seat in the inner world of mind, the mother of might, look down on passing things. She is the mother of might. Shaktiman, might, and at the same time Mata. She is holding them here. Listen to the advancing trade of time. She sees the passage of time, moments of things, history rolling down. She is looking at the thing and she is hearing them. Listen to the advancing trade of time. Saw the irresistible wheeling of the suns. The suns themselves are moving in the skies constantly. She sees all those movements and heard the thunder of the march of God through the passage of time. What does she hear? In spite of all these difficulties, all these obstacles which are there, the actions of the anti-divine forces, their hostilities, in spite of that, what does she see? She sees the triumphant march of God in the passage of time, and heard the thunder of the march of God. Amid the swaying forces in their strife, sovereign was her word of luminous command. Such authority she has got, and so bright and brilliant and splendid that what she says must happen. Her speech, like a war cry, rang, or a pilgrim chant. As a pilgrim goes to the temple, goes to a holy place, goes to a shrine, and he goes on constantly chanting, constantly Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi, Anandamayi, Chaitanyamayi, Satyamayi. He constantly keeps on chanting, and this is what she hears. Her speech, like a war cry, rang, or a pilgrim chant, a charm restoring hope in failing hearts. Our hearts are feeble, our hearts are weak, but she is there to restore hope in our weakness. Aspire the harmony of her puissant voice, and it is in that condition she is speaking. Her voice is rising, and she is telling to Savitri, "Oh Savitri, I am thy secret soul." She is revealing to her, to Savitri, with all these qualifications, with all those beautiful things in her possession, with that majesty, loftiness, sublimity, everything is there in her command. And it is with that she is telling Savitri, Savitri, I am your secret soul.